Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into two really important pediatric neurological conditions that you often see together: hydrocephalus and spina bifida. We're going to break down what they are, what to look for, and the absolutely critical care that's involved, all based on some solid clinical source materials.
So let's kick things off with a bit of a clinical mystery. What on earth could possibly connect something that sounds as poetic as sunset eyes with the, well, kind of alarming cracked pot sound that a nurse might hear on a baby's skull? I know it sounds pretty strange, but for a trained professional, these are massive clues pointing to something very serious going on.
And the answer to that puzzle, it lies deep inside the brain, with a condition called hydrocephalus. So let's get into it and really unpack what's happening with all this pressure.
So what is it exactly? Well, in simple terms, hydrocephalus is when you get a buildup of cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, inside the brain's ventricles. Now, CSF is normally a great thing. It's like a natural cushion for the brain. But in this case, the best way to picture it is as a major plumbing problem happening right inside the head.
So why does this plumbing problem happen? It really boils down to one of two things. Either there's a blockage somewhere and the fluid can't drain out like it's supposed to, or there's an imbalance where the body's just making way more fluid than it can absorb. Either way, you get the same result. Fluid gets trapped, and the pressure inside that tiny skull starts to climb.
And this is where that mystery from the beginning starts to make sense. See, all that pressure doesn't just stay hidden. It starts to create these classic telltale signs that a sharp healthcare professional, especially a nurse, has to be able to spot.
And here they are, the classic signs. That pressure makes the fontanelle, the soft spot on a baby's head, bulge right out. It can cause a very distinct, high-pitched, almost shrieking cry. You'll literally see the head getting bigger as the skull bones stretch. And there are our clues. The sunset sign, where the eyes are pushed downwards. And Macoin's sign, that cracked pot sound. Every single one of these is a textbook red flag for increased intracranial pressure.
And this isn't just theory. If you look at the source material, you can see how vital these physical checks are. Question 48 points right to sunset eyes and a bulging fontanelle as key early signs. Question 52 talks about how feeling that fontanelle is a major nursing assessment. This is real-world, frontline diagnosis in action.
Now, hydrocephalus often doesn't show up alone. It's frequently linked to another condition, which is where we're going next: spina bifida. This is a congenital issue, something that happens really early in development when the neural tube, the little structure that's supposed to become the brain and spinal cord, doesn't close up all the way.
And the source material points out two key types here. With a meningocele, you have a little sac that pokes out, and it's got fluid and the protective membranes in it. But, and this is the important part, the spinal cord itself is okay. But then you have myelomeningocele. In this one, that sac also contains a piece of the spinal cord and nerves. And because the cord itself is involved, it is by far the more severe condition.
This quote from the source really drives home just how serious this is. It says, its presence indicates that many areas of the CNS may be underdeveloped or function improperly. That makes it so clear that this isn't just a problem with the spine, it's a sign that the whole central nervous system could have widespread issues.
Okay, so you're faced with these incredibly complex conditions. What do? What's the immediate game plan? Well, the source material lays out a really clear set of priorities for care, both before and after any surgery happens.
Before surgery for spina bifida, there is one job that is more important than anything else: protect that exposed sac. The source material is very clear about this. The goal is to cover it with a moist, sterile dressing. Why? To keep it from drying out, of course, but even more importantly, to prevent a devastating infection from getting a direct route into the central nervous system.
All right, now for hydrocephalus. The main treatment is a pretty amazing piece of medical engineering called a ventriculoperitoneal shunt, or VP shunt. Think of it as a new drainage pipe. A little tube runs from the brain's ventricle all the way down into the abdomen, where that extra CSF can just be absorbed by the body. So after surgery, the #1 priority becomes all about taking care of this new shunt.
And the care right after surgery is incredibly specific. As the source material points out, the child has to be placed flat and on the side they didn't operate on. Now, why so specific? Well, this exact position is absolutely critical to stop the CSF from draining out too fast. If it drains too quickly, the ventricles could collapse, and it could wreck the delicate valve on the shunt. After surgery, it's all about watching like a hawk. So, priority number 1, measure the head circumference every single day. It's the most direct, straightforward way to know if the shunt is doing its job or if fluid is starting to build up again.
Priority number 2 is a hands-on check. You have to physically feel the fontanelle. A nurse's trained fingers can tell right away if that soft spot is getting tense or starting to bulge. And that's a primary sign that the pressure inside is going up.
And priority number 3 is to always be on the lookout for a shunt malfunction. The source notes that if the shunt is working, you shouldn't see any of those old signs. So if that fontanelle starts bulging again or the head measurements start creeping up, that's a huge red flag that the shunt might have failed.
And all of this brings us to one last thought. We've talked about these incredible surgical shunts and advanced procedures. But what the source material makes so clear is that sometimes the most important tools aren't machines at all. It really leaves you with this question. In this kind of complex pediatric care, what's really more powerful? The latest piece of technology or a nurse's trained hands, sharp eyes, and clinical gut feeling? Thanks for watching.